Hi, super readers. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, whatever the case might be for you. As always, we know that we are an international crowd in all of these calls that we have for our quests. I am Alex. I'll be your moderator for this session. And on behalf of Mind Valley, I would like to welcome you to your super reading Q&A coaching call number 1. And we have an awesome session prepared for you today because we'll tackle very interesting topics belonging mainly to the start of your super reading quest. And you are already 5 days in at this point. And just like a quick recap of what the things that you've learned, first of all, you found out what was your WPM, or your starting reading speed. Then you learned about clearing some common obstacles like the lack of education, the lack of focus, and regression. Then you got introduced to your first super tool, which was using a visual pacer, which luckily for most of us, we have one handy at all times, right? Then you learn about the importance of the visual pacer and the why behind the visual pacer. And also today in day 5, you started learning about indentation reading, right? So the main questions will be, did you calculate your WPM? Did you start scheduling your daily reading? And did you start practicing your reading with your visual pacer or with your indentation technique, or together, right? So we have a content-packed week and we have a content-packed session for you today, and I believe you'll get a lot of great insights from this session. That being said, and without further ado, let's bring to the stage a man who began sneaking comic books into his bedtime routine in order to practice reading. He's the host of the Kwik Brain podcast, and of course the author of the best-selling Super Brain Quest by Mind Valley, and of course our wonderful brain coach on this journey to becoming super readers, Jim Kwik. Hello, Jim.
Hey, Alex, thank you. Thank you for having me, and thank you for all you do. Few people know what goes on behind the scenes for creating these programs, and I want to thank you and the entire Mind Valley Quest team for making this possible. And hello to all our rapid readers out there from all around the world. How amazing is it that, no longer do classrooms, have 4 walls, right? It's amazing that we all are connected here and nobody has to do it alone. We're all doing it together. And so your success is our success. And so I'm looking forward to having this conversation with you over the next hour. And I just want to give everybody who's watching this that you have my utmost respect, because you are people who do something versus many people who just talk about it. And you're active, you're here, you're doing it, because we know that knowledge is not really power. Knowledge is potential power. It only becomes power when we utilize it, when we apply it. And so I want to thank you for doing the work. Few people do the work, and so you have my respect. So I want to give you 100%. And I do see all your comments here, chatting here, all around from Asia to Australia to Africa, all over Europe and the Americas. Thank you. So let's do this. Jump right into it.
Great. Okay. Our first question comes from Roman that said, for our training, for this specific training, is it good to read books in another language during this course, or is it better to stick to books in our native language?
Roman, that's a great question. I think a lot of people, because this is such an international group, these techniques will work regardless of the language that you use. What the primary focus for this program is training. My goal here is behavioral acquisition, is skill development. And so I want you to learn under the best conditions. So I would recommend, while you could use any language and apply this to, I would use your primary language, because you're going to be learning new cognitive and behavioral skills. It's not just, you'll be pleasantly surprised, because this is more than just a speech reading program. It's really a whole brain learning system. And I know many of you have gone through Super Brain, so there's practically no overlap purposely, with this program. But the system really is, there's some, techniques that you need to be able to acquire, and it's best to be done under ideal conditions. So I would practice with your primary language. After you go through this program and have the new skill over the next few weeks, then you could delve into, second and third languages. And so for example, it's not going to help you. Now, keep in mind, if you can't read French very well, reading it faster is not going to help you, right? So the bottleneck becomes your understanding of that language. So I would start with your primary language, the one that you're best at.
So let's move on to this question from Jonathan that said, should our 10 minutes of daily reading practice be done for comprehension as well, or just focus on speed for this stage of the class?
This is exciting because you started the first week together, and what you're going to see is your progress is going to be gradual. But here's the thing, a little by little, a little becomes a lot. So everyone, you would write this down, that consistency compounds. And really, what would I want people doing for the first, when they're practicing for their 10 minutes, is to practice for the speed first. The comprehension will be there. And trust me, for me, you know, there's a book behind me called, a great book by the creator of TED, the founder of TED. And he's written over 90 books, on a lot of them mostly on information management. And one of his latest books is called Understanding Understanding. It's kind of interesting, right? Understanding. What does it mean to understand something? And he went to these individuals to find out, these experts from different points of view, what does it mean to understand? So he went to David Blaine, the world famous magician, you know, and so he went to, like, you know, one of the best architects, you know, Frank Gehry, and you know, about what does it mean to understand. And I was fortunate to be asked to contribute from a memory standpoint, because there is no understanding without remembering something. So comprehension is very top of my list. And what I'm going to ask you to do is really focus the first week on the technique itself, following the visual pacer across your page, across your tablet, if you will. Because if you're trying to do that and understand at the same time, then you're trying to learn two things at once. What I want you to focus on is just the technique. And once you get the technique, the comprehension will be there. And I also suppose a number of you, do you understand some of what you're reading already? I would suppose, you know, after teaching this is my 28th year of teaching. So, you know, and so we have a lot of feedback. And so right now I'm going to ask you to trust me and trust the process, that for the first week you'll get, if you get stuck on the comprehension part, you're never going to be able to build the rhythm and the speed. Does that make sense? If you really so focus on every minute detail of understanding, you're never going to get the flow of the actual reading. And once you get the flow, then the comprehension will grow to be able to meet that. Because after the first week, we almost solely focus on comprehension and understanding of what you read and retaining what you read. So amazing.
Great. Okay, next question we have from Himashu that said, the book holding angle you mentioned is quite a task and not always possible. So for example, when reading in transit or even at a study table, does it have to be like that, or is there another way that we can do?
That's a great question, Himanshu. So what I would say is it's really idiosyncratic. And so when people hold the book, they could do it because everybody has different body types. Everybody has different idiosyncratic movements. And so what's comfortable for one person might not be comfortable for another. The rules generally, and now keep in mind, it's not right or wrong. It's just what's good, better, and best. Sometimes we just cannot learn under ideal situations. Sometimes there is noise in the background. Sometimes it's too dark. Sometimes you're on an airplane and you're in this kind of crunched up seat, or you're on the metro or the shuttle and there are people around you and there's a crying baby here. The idea here is just to optimize as much as you can in time and space. So first, let me stipulate that it's not always perfect environment. And so that's why you want to learn these techniques so you can be flexible. Now, when I'm holding the book, this book as an example, most people tend to hold the book one of two ways. Now, what I said was, and I know there are a number of questions on how to hold the book. Sometimes if you put the book just on the table, the tabletop or the desk, the problem is you're looking at it at an angle and the words are smaller and harder to read, especially as you're going faster. So that's difficult. So what a lot of people unconsciously do is they slump over the table so they can see the book full on and the words look bigger, which make them easier to read. The problem is when you slump, you collapse your diaphragm and you get tired because you're not getting enough oxygen to your brain. Now, generally, leaning the book, if you happen to have a desktop, it's really easy to lean it right on the desktop like I'm doing right now, because for just efficiency. For the energy. You don't just expend energy to be able to hold the book open. So ideally you have it there. Now, if I'm sitting, like let's say cross-leg, and I'll just rest the book on my knee or on my lap like that, because it's at an angle. Some people prefer to hold it like this, open like this, and then they're reading like this across the page, and they're holding it up on top. Some people prefer to hold it on the bottom like this, and then they go across the page. Now, really, but the answer is it's whatever works for you. Some things are going to be a little bit uncomfortable in the beginning, just like if you learn how to type with all your fingers, it gets a little uncomfortable because if you're used to doing this, with 2 fingers, hunt and peck, and then you switch over to use 10 fingers, it might feel a little bit different, but in the long term, it's better because you're more efficient, because you're using more of your resources. And what I would say is the simple answer is do what's best for you, but just understand the principle is ideally you're upright so that you're not slumped, you're in visual mode, and you're not blocking your airways by your posture being compromised. And also, ideally, the book face is facing you, so the words are easier to read as opposed to at an angle also as well. Knee resting me too. This is great. Patience. I just want to address what Lindsay said. What patience is so important with this process. And that's the thing. Everyone will get results. Even on Instagram yesterday, I posted for people who saw my story. I post a lot of your success stories. This person has dyslexia and doubled their reading speed in the first few lessons. And for everybody, it's different. And so when I say that, it's more to inspire you, saying not to give up, because it's only been a handful of days. And so for everybody, we'll get the result. It's just the stick-with-itness, and the results will show. But I would say patience, that my definition of patience, by the way, some people feel like patience is like passive, like passively waiting for something to happen. That's not my definition of patience. Like you're patient in a relationship, or you're patient in for your health. What I would say patience, my definition is keeping a good attitude while you continue to work. And so keep a good attitude and continue to do the work, you'll get the result.
Okay, next question we have from Anne that wants some tips. So do you have any tips on how to hold the book and use the tracking method at the same time? Because some books are very large and unwieldy, and others are very small and clumsy. But your models always use both hands for this techniques.
What I would say is, again, whatever works for you is what's best. There's no right or wrong. It's whatever gets the results. And the goal, again, is if it's uncomfortable in the beginning, know the difference between something that's uncomfortable, for your body type and in terms of like how you are structured, somatically, and also understand the difference between, something feeling uncomfortable for a little while and then becoming more comfortable. And so the prime directive of the first week is, if you want greater speed, use your finger while you read. And if you've gone through the program, you understand some of the reasons why using a visual pacer helps you. And I noticed there were a couple questions whether, keeping your finger on the page. I wouldn't keep it on the page because there's this thing called friction. So whether you're reading a print book or a screen, do not slide it against the surface, be right above the surface. What I would say also is sometimes, the book is big. I mean, some people go online and they buy like a book stand, and they prefer to use that, and that's their ideal situation. Maybe it's not as portable to be able to carry with you to class or when you're commuting. But again, the prime directive is keep upright in that visual space. You're not collapsed, and also you want the words as large as possible, that they're comfortable for you.
Since we have a lot of questions on the visual pacer, just let's pick a few of them. First question, do you focus on the tip of your finger moving from left to right while mapping the words above, or do I just focus on reading each word above the tip of my finger while moving my finger very slowly on the page?
Good. Very good. Great question. And so what you want to get really good at is following your finger. And what I'm looking at is like right above my finger. And so when I do exercises, even there are techniques that we talk about, that if you just took, let's say, a marker and just practice without moving your head, just looking at it, because a lot of people's eyes are tired because they they're not used to exercising their eyes. Their eyes are always myopic, like your foveal vision, which is your focus vision, as opposed to your peripheral vision, where you're relaxed and you can take more in. But a lot of people are just so used to looking at their phones or their screens at a very specific distance all the time. Like even now, you'll see me every once in a while look out to the distance, where I am, so I can see outside the window, because I don't want them to get so entrained and so used to looking just, exactly 2 feet in front of me. But to answer your question, you're looking right above your finger, right? So what I'm doing is when I'm moving this around, I'm looking at as if I'm pointing at it, and that object is right above my finger.
As I am using my finger as a visual pacer, I notice some pain and muscle cramping in my hand once I've been reading for a few minutes longer. Is there a recommended way to move your finger or hand under the words to reduce or eliminate this pain that might appear?
Yeah, I mean, so part of it, again, with our eyes or our finger, some of the pain, and I'll always check with a health practitioner. Some people have struggled because they have carpal tunnel, or they have some kind of challenge, with their digits. What I would say is, and that goes for your eyes also as well. Getting your eyes checked, having good eye health is very important in this process as well. You'd be surprised how many people change prescription for their eyeglass, their reading glasses, or their contact lenses, and all of a sudden everything opens up for you. What I would say, going back to this, when it comes to your finger motion, similar to your eyes, some people know the difference that if they're not used to moving it, it's like going to the gym and you try you take a spin class, or you take a CrossFit class, and all of a sudden the next day you feel like pain in muscles that you didn't realize you even had on your body, because you've never really worked out those muscles. So there's a difference. That being said, some people they get tired because they're moving their finger back and forth, and this is a very small muscle. My goal is I use my whole arm, actually. So when I'm reading, I'm holding the book open like this, and then I'm just underlining the words, and I'm just using you see, I'm not going like this, because this is a small muscle. This get tired. I'm just going right across the page. So part of it might be uncomfortable. Now remember, just like if you learn to tie your shoe in a different way now, or you had to do anything a little bit different, it's going to feel a little bit uncomfortable. And I want to encourage you that, the difference between the professionals and the people who are not at that level are the ability to persevere past the uncomfortable place, because it's just like a butterfly. While the beauty is in the butterfly, the strength and the growth happens in the cocoon. It's that caterpillar developing its wings and busting out of that cocoon. That's where it builds the strength to be able to soar and be able to fly. So understand that whether it's your eyes or your understanding or it's your hand motions, if you're not uncomfortable, you're probably not learning something brand new. So I want to encourage you again that this is a long game. This is a 21-day game. And so I'm going to encourage you not to be frustrated or upset. And if you do, take a deep breath. And many of you are very familiar with personal growth. You're very familiar with energy, whether it's emotional freedom technique or any kind of thing of just, or even perspective. Be kind with yourself. Don't beat yourself up. Just because there are people in the program that are doing better than others, it's not a comparison. That's where you don't want to go. It's nice to use people as inspiration for you and know it's possible, but you go at your own pace. And I can't tell you how many people, they struggled a little bit. 3 weeks into it, they only made like 50% growth. And in one day, all of a sudden it snapped, and they just jumped and they tripled their reading speed, and they were ahead of the class, if you will. And so everybody does it at a different pace, just like anything else. My message for you is it's not always easy. I never said this is going to be easy. What I'm telling you is it's worth it, because this is a skill that will put you in the top 1% of readers. Most people cannot compete at that level. It's a huge advantage. But that being said, I'm holding the book open. I'm holding it at an angle. I'm upright, and I'm just underlining the words like this, just moving my finger back and forth, not touching the page, just above the page. And I'm looking right just above my visual pacer, my finger. Now, also, if you wanted to use a pen, if that's more comfortable for you, then by all means, you could do the same thing and just underlining the words without actually doing it.
Great. Okay, let's see some other questions here on the same idea. How far from the page should the visual pacer be? Because I find it easier when my finger is actually very close or touching the page.
Yeah, so I would go as close as you can. I mean, you're not. I don't measure with a ruler how close I am. The reason I don't drag my finger on the page is because as you speed up, there's the friction, and or if you're on a screen, obviously you don't want to be touching the screen if you're reading on a tablet. But if you're reading on a book, print, which is my preference to read on print paper, because I'm trying to stay off digital devices as much as possible. We're all on screens all the time. I'm just trying to minimize myself. But that being said, get as close as you can without touching the page itself, because the friction. I've burned so many. I set so many books on fire just touching the page itself. So avoid that.
So actually, Mihaela, I saw a question earlier. She wants to know why exactly is this do you give this advice to not touch the paper with the finger?
Yeah,
Although you mentioned that visual and touch are also interconnected within the book.
yeah. I mean, using your finger, because I mean you're still using your kinesthetic system, which is important. What I'm saying is don't touch the paper, because like when you go faster in the beginning, it's okay, but I rather you train correctly in the beginning, and when you're doing it, it's not bad the friction, but as you go faster, you'll feel it. So I don't want you to burn off your fingerprints in the process.
Is there any difference in using our hand or a pen as a visual pacer? And if yes, which is better?
In my experience, none at all. What, again, it's not right or wrong. It's whatever works best for you. And I want to give you enough structure, but give you enough flexibility to have freedom. And so for some people, they just love it, holding a pen, because they take notes. They keep their pen open or a pencil. Now, while you're training, you're not going to be doing that. I want you to understand that the enjoyment of the process is secondary to the training. When you're with me in this quest every day and practicing each day for your 10 minutes of training, that's under under the way I'm teaching you. Later on, when you're reading later that day, you could use, take notes and everything else like that. I'm just asking you not to do that, because you're going to break up your training experience. But for me, now keep in mind, you have a lot more to go in this program. All right, so you have a lot more, and a lot of these questions are going to be answered in a big way, and not only answered by me teaching you, you're going to learn them through experience by doing it. And so the answer would be, doesn't matter. Visual pacer, it could be a pen, a highlighter, a pencil, your finger, any of that works. Whatever you're most comfortable with.
Mm-hmm. And similar type of question, does it matter which hand do we use? Is it our left hand or our right hand?
Yeah, we're going to cover that in a few days. So it's going to be very apparent. On day 9, I believe, we're going to talk about which hand to be able to use. Right now you could use your dominant hand. For those of you who feel challenge, like a challenge, because some of you are like, you're getting this. After a few days, you kind of feel it. Then I would challenge you to use your left hand, very specifically. So you'll know why. And how it's going to help you with your comprehension in an upcoming session.
Awesome. So a common situation that I have seen also in the tribe and in the question comes from Evelyn, that said, my speed has increased. However, since I am not really concentrating on comprehension, just the speed has increased when I see words, but I cannot quite tell what I am reading about. My understanding is much less now. If I move the finger too fast, I cannot understand the meaning of the words I read. Am I doing it correctly, or should I lower my speed?
Yeah, great question. What I would say is, in the beginning, the first week together, and we're almost complete the first week together, I'm going to ask you to set your expectations aside and detach yourself from the understanding of it. Now, that's not to say you're not going to understand everything you read. My main goal over the first handful of days is for you to get used to following your finger, because once we lock that in, then we're going to focus on comprehension. I hope that makes sense, because we can't focus on comprehension in the beginning because, and this is why, if you're so myopic trying to get every nuance of what you understand, you're never going to be able to get the technique down. So once you feel comfortable using your finger, then I would be focusing on not going any faster than you understand. But there's this stretch point, meaning just like working out, if it's too comfortable, you're probably not growing your muscles. You're probably just maintaining what you already have, if that makes sense. So there'll be exercise coming up where I'm going to challenge you to be able to go faster. And by doing these drills, you know, in different forms, it's going to stretch you. But you never want to go so fast that it's just like multitudes faster. And so what I would say is go at a rate that's comfortable for you, but the main principle is get used to following your finger, the words. So here, your eyes are following your finger and your finger is going through the words. And that's why you're getting the words.
Awesome. So here's a common curiosity from Olga. Jim, can you please share with us what is your word per minute when reading?
I say this because I want to just frame this right. I've been doing this for 28 years, so it's not a comparison or even a competition. But you know, I read quickly. I could sit down in an hour or sub-hour and read a book that you would see online or something that somebody in our community has written, you know. And so I do this because I feel like reading is great exercise, or reading is to your mind what exercise is to your body. And that's my workout. If you saw it on Instagram a couple of days ago, it was like Will Smith's birthday, and he and I did an Instagram video together. And I was like, what do you do every single day? It was part of your routine for keeping your brain sharp. He was like, Jim, I do two things. He was like, I run and I read. You do something physical, you do something mental. And the reading is the best exercise I've found. And there's a difference between reading something and listening to an audiobook, because I saw a couple questions on this. Like, it activates a different part of your brain. And the other part of it is with audio, people tend to have better, when they're tested on what the material, they tend to do better with actual reading than listening to audiobooks. And usually the reason is they're twofold. Listening is like watching TV. It's passive. And we know through study that the more engaged you are, the more active you are, then the more you're going to get out of it. And so by reading, it's a more active process. And so thus the comprehension and the deeper understanding. The other part about is when people listen to audio, and I listen to audio books, you know, when I'm driving, when I'm working out, when I cannot be looking at, reading actually, I listen to it. So I'm not against it. I'm just saying another reason why the comprehension is not usually as good when people listen to audiobooks is because usually they're doing it when they're doing something else. They're not just sitting and listening and studying it. They're washing dishes, or they're driving, or as I said, they're working out. And so part of their attention is spread. So I know I saw two people post it, you know, while we're talking about audiobooks. And I would just say reading is just more active, better exercise for your mind. It could be better for your comprehension also as well. And still listen to audios. Absolutely. But I would say that I could finish a book cover to cover in an hour. And again, but here's the thing, when I say reading speed, because the average person, you know, you probably in the 250 words per minute. You know, I like to get people to really about 450 words a minute. That's where they really feel the advantage, when they've about doubled their current reading speed. You know, but some people have already, you know, are about to surpass that number, which is phenomenal. You know, like I feel like if you get above the 450, that'll put you in the top 1% of all readers. So if you want to extrapolate how fast I read, the average book has about 64,000 words. And so you could do the math. If I could read that in an hour, you could get an idea of how fast you read. And that also being said, my reading, like your reading will be at the end of this quest, will be variable, meaning if I don't understand a subject, I'm still bound by my speed is still bound by my understanding of a subject. All right. So if I have no background in quantum physics, don't understand it, I'm not going to read that as fast as I'm going to read a novel. Okay. But the reason we practice in a novel, in a fiction novel, again, is because I want you to learn under ideal scenario. And that's how you build a skill set. And then once you have that ingrained, you could apply that towards your technical reading, your business reading, a lot of the more technical stuff. But my reading speed, like everybody else's, it's variable. It's not limited to just, because here's the thing, and you'll see this, like most people read at 200 words per minute and they read everything at 200 words a minute. Doesn't matter. My goal for you is, as you build your skill set over the next few weeks, and it's not even at the end of 21 days, you could keep and continue and keep on doing the drills and even increase, but you'll know what I know already to be able to master your reading. But some things you'll read at 400 words a minute, but some things you'll zip through it at 700 words a minute. It really depends. And some of it will depend on how awake you are also. So these numbers are never just set. They're not fixed, right? Depending on how much background information you have, you'll read it faster. Depending on how awake you are, you can read it faster. Depending on how focused you are, because somebody could be a great reader, but they have a family member in the hospital, and they have kids in the next room they have to put some of their attention to. So they're not going to be able to read as fast just because of their cognitive load. So it's gonna vary, for it. When I went through this and I first learned these strategies with a fraction of what you will know at the end of these 21 days, I very comfortably tripled my reading speed. And keep in mind, I had severe learning challenges. So I was very below average when I got started.
I think that you mentioned in the course material something really interesting, the fact that a good reader is also a flexible reader, because within one book you can have sections of it that you can really just speed read through it, and you might have paragraphs or sections that you need to slow down because of the need to understand them, because maybe you do not have prior knowledge about that particular element.
Yeah, very, very much so. I appreciate you bringing that up, Alex. Like when you're reading a book, it's never consistent all the way through because there's some chapters, and also part of it as we get through the first week and we really become more comfortable with the speed, a lot of it will come based on smart reading. And there's sections of this training where I teach you it's not just about speed reading, it's about reading smart, reading intelligently. Again, reading for purpose. Sometimes you want to slow down in a certain portion of the book because that has the answer you're looking for, because you're reading with intent. A lot of people do not get answers and comprehension because they don't know what their champagne moment's going to be. Meaning, how do you know you're going to pop open the champagne and celebrate? Because you know what the goal is. Like in sports, it's very, very clear when somebody wins. But a lot of people are not picking up books with any clear intention of what they're looking to get from this book. So they don't even know when they find it, when it's right in front of them.
Keep at it, guys. Practice. I saw a couple of questions here when you are worried that for one of the tests, your reading speed dropped. Well, I'm doing the quest with you as well. I'm also quite a fast reader myself. So for one of the, I'm currently reading The Hero with 1,000 Faces, right, by Joseph Campbell. So for one of the, I took it page by page. So for one of the speeding drills there, the tests, I got a my WPM was 250 words per minute. And for the same book, a few pages later, when I did the test again for one of the other tests, my reading speed was close to 500 words per minute. So within the same book, I had different.
And that's normal. The goal here again is everybody who's with me right now, what I'm asking you to do is not judge based on a 24-hour or 40-hour span any more than you would do with a workout. You know the growth is happening. It's just, the goal is for it to be an upward curve, but sometimes there are peaks and sometimes there are valleys. And part of it has to do with your circadian rhythms. Some of it has to do with your hormones. Some of it has to do with how you slept the night before. So the goal here is to go from here to here, but it's not going to be a straight line. It's not like every day you chart, it's going to be like exactly 10% increase to here, any more than successes in life. Having the perfect body or the perfect financials, whatever, or relationship here. We know it's never a straight line. It's curvy, but the goal is hopefully it's an upward curve. And then even if you have a couple of dips, that you're going to bounce back because you're doing the work. And these are just natural laws. It's just like building your body.
Another common situation that I saw, when I use a visual pacer, I noticed that my eyes move faster than the pacer. So what should I do? Move the visual pacer faster, but what if I cannot seem to move it fast enough to keep with the speed of my eyes?
Here's that's a great question. Let's unpack that a little bit because everyone can benefit from it. The goal is to follow your finger while you read. And as your finger increases in speed, you're going to be looking at the words faster. That just makes sense, right? But here's the thing. But if there's a gap between if you're going faster than your finger or slower than your finger, the goal over the first week of practicing is just to get used to following your finger. That's the most important thing. That's why I say put comprehension aside. And many of you, I'm reading your comments, many of you are actually understanding a surprising amount of it. That's fine, but that's not your goal. If you're not even understanding everything, you're doing it right, as long as you're practicing following your finger, okay? And so you control your finger. Nobody's controlling the finger for you, and you control your eye movements. The goal when I'm doing the first week, the reason why I say put comprehension second, is just get used to following your finger. That's it. And as you're reading, and then once you're used to following your finger, you're not thinking about your eyes following the finger anymore. You're doing it second nature. And then what are you going to do? You're going to start focusing on the words, and then you're going to get the comprehension. But my goal is for you to be entrained with your finger. So, and a great exercise to do that with is literally taking your finger and just moving it and just focusing it. And I like to go in this infinity signal, in the symbol, is just do this. And I would challenge you to do this right now with me. I would challenge you to shake out your hands right now, put your finger right in front of you, like a foot in front of you, or wherever you're comfortable, like in terms of your vision, where you could see it. And then just make the infinity sign. It's like an 8 on its side. And just move it. And do not move your head, but just follow your finger. And you could breathe too. Some of you are holding your breath. I could sense it. And then go backwards also. And if your eyes are tired, it just means we're not used to using our eyes, moving around. Now, by the way, yeah, if you're walking home and you're doing all this and you're doing multiple things, be intelligent about it. But the goal is you're going to see this. It's just like what I teach you. And if you've gone through the super brain and my morning routine and brushing your hand with brushing your teeth with the opposite hand, it feels awkward for like a week or two. But then after a while, it's like, oh, you're not even thinking about it, because you just learned a new habit. You just learned a new skill set. So you're not supposed to be perfect at this, but what I'm saying is if you put your energy to it and just get used to. So the answer would be, don't go any faster than you want to, and just follow the finger. Just follow the finger. Once you get that, when we start doing the drills where we're speeding up, your eyes are just used to following your finger. But it's worth it. Even if you want to practice without a book, just follow your finger or follow your pen and do it slow. When you're doing this, just do it slow. I just did a podcast interview yesterday with one of the top self-protection people in the world, and about self-protection, like combat. And we're talking about situational awareness, like people, and trusting your fear and your intuition, how a lot of people don't do that. But one of the things was his methodology for teaching. You have to crawl, to walk, to run, but get really good at those basics, right? They say in training, in martial arts training, they say slow is smooth and smooth is fast. Slow is smooth and smooth becomes fast. And what I'm asking you to do when you're practicing, just get used to, you could go slow, that's fine. Just get used to following your finger. Because once you slow down, you're used to it, then we go fast. But you just got to get used to following your finger where it is. And you're going to see there are going to be a lot of extra benefits that come from having that ability.
So common concerns here. My instinct to comprehend is strong, and it's actually slowing me down while I'm using the visual pacer. So how do I get myself to just focus on the words and follow the pacer rather than being scared of the lack of comprehension?
If that's the case, because what's going to keep you, see, this is the challenge, right? The big challenge over the first week or so of doing this is I've noticed the people that are so obsessed about comprehension, they have the least of it because they won't proceed to get the technique down, because they don't want to go any faster than it's comfortable for them. And that's what keeps them reading slowly. Two techniques you could practice is get a book in another language and practice with that, or take your current book and turn it upside down. Turn it upside down, and I want you to look at the page upside down and practice this way. Because honestly, the comprehension is not as important. What I'm asking you to do is get used to learning to be able to follow your finger faster. If you do that, you get the prize of comprehension at the end of this program, if not many before. But if you take your book, turn it upside down, it automatically says, okay, I'm not going to understand this. So you have to release and surrender to have something better, all right? Because you cannot learn to be able to follow your finger if you're just obsessed with every single nuance and concept, because then you're going to stop. And then you're never going to build the rhythm and the flow through the reading. So my two things is like surrender in the process, much like you would tell your children to do, when they're learning something. The goal is not perfection. Take a step backwards. Just like when I was a very tough-ass typer when I was typing two fingers, but then when my teacher, in middle school asked me to use all these fingers, I typed slower. And then everyone started to surpass me because I started going like this, staying with my old ways while everybody else was doing this. And then those people were ahead of me. And I said, that's not fair. They're using 5 times more fingers. But I had to take a step back to take 3 leaps forwards. And so I would say that I know we're saying the same thing over and over again, but sometimes human beings, we need the different stories and the motivation, and I'll cajole you and cheer you on in different ways. But forget about comprehension the first week, and you'll get it. That's the gift. You surrender what you're attached to, and you'll have loads of it. And I promise you do this, and you have faith in the process and faith in yourself, you'll have better comprehension in this process than when you started. That's the gift you give yourself. All right, but you got to let go of this temporarily. It's like trying to describe to somebody what a rainbow looks like that's never seen a rainbow, or trying to describe what a rose smells like who's never smelled a rose. Most people, and again, we've trained people in every country on this planet, for almost 3 decades. I'm telling you, most people don't even realize how little comprehension they have currently just in reading. And so you're going to learn to be able to understand things at a new level, but you just kind of give it away for now.
And I saw Lindsay primed a very good suggestion here. Remember the F in fast, guys. So forget everything that you know before, including slow reading and slow comprehension.
There you go. I love it.
Okay, great. So guys, your comprehension will catch up with your speed. Basically, this would be
and we're going to do this, and watch this. When we do this again, and we do this live again, I guarantee you people are like, oh my God, yeah, what he said is true. And then some people who didn't do it are like, I'm not really sure. Maybe I'm going to stick with my old ways. But if you're doing this program, then you know that the old way is not working for you. So you only need 2 things. You need motivation and an open mind. Obviously you're motivated because you're here, but some people are motivated who don't have an open mind to learning something brand new, then they're not going to learn it. And somebody can be very open-minded, but if they're motivated to do the work, then they're not going to get the results either. But your mind is like a parachute. It only works when it's open. And so keep your mind open and trust the process. It's been like 5 days. Okay.
Awesome, very true. Also, our friends who use digital devices will want some advice on how to use the visual pacer. So for computer screens, but most importantly, also for small devices like phones, right? And how do you use a visual pacer for a phone?
Yeah, so I'm going to ask you right now not to. And remember what I'm saying with this program. It is a training program. My goal is not to just inspire you and be positive and motivate you. My goal is skill acquisition. I want you to learn it. So in order to do that, I want you to learn under very specific circumstances. And again, this has been honed by 28 years of just getting feedback from individuals in order to process it so you can get these results in less than 30 days. That's my commitment to you. Now, that being said, that when we're talking about digital devices, doing this on your phone, yes, I do have a Batman cover. I love superheroes. You guys know this already. This is not the best ideal situation any more than practicing in dim light is, or a really loud environment is. This is just too small to practice a brand new skill. It's just like learning to swim. You don't throw somebody in the high current ocean waves. with jellyfish and all this other stuff, right? You want to learn under the best conditions in a way that you feel safe, and that skill will translate see, the reason why we talked about the 5 obstacles to effective reading is my goal is to help you to unlearn these bad habits of regression, of back skipping, of not having focus while you read, of belief issues that you have. And one of the best ways of improving your limiting beliefs is get you to do something you never thought you could do, of subvocalization, which we're going to talk about in future lesson, reducing the inner talk you have to be able to read faster. But once you could do that, once you are reading and you have better focus and you're not regressing, back skipping, rereading words, and you're not subvocalizing as much, that's going to translate to this. Right? Once you've trained your brain, just like when you go to the gym and you get on the treadmill and you've trained yourself to go at 3.0 and 5.0 and 6.0 and 7.0, that fitness translates to your everyday. When you need to do the stairs at a building, when you need to go on that hike with your family, right? You have that fitness. Your heart is in good shape. You're getting lots of oxygen. Your muscles are prime. You're flexible. You're not going to get injured because you train yourself every single day. What I'm asking you to do is train in a way that it promotes your best technique. Because if you do something where it has low light, too much noise, too small a screen, you're not going to get the technique down. So I'm going to ask you right now to ideally read with a print book, right? And not a small paperback book. I could grab a small paperback book off of for the same reason here, but the words are smaller and it's harder to hold open. And the techniques will work, but what I'm really showing you is how to think faster. All right. And whether you're reading on a screen or a computer screen or anything else, it'll translate there. But you got to learn the right way. So we got to unlearn bad habits of back skipping, unlearn bad habits of focus, unlearn bad habits of subvocalizing, saying the words under perfect conditions. And then even when you're not using this book, you're on a screen, you're on a tablet, you're in a busy, train or whatever it is, you're on an airplane, you'll still have the ability to process information faster.
Common question is it better to read out loud or silently?
Pretty much one and the same. The goal is to reduce both. Okay, so I just want to make it clear. When I talk about one of the obstacles to effective reading, it's called subvocalization. You notice when you're reading to yourself, you hear that inner voice inside your head. Hopefully it's your own voice. It's not like somebody else's voice inside your head. The reason why it's a challenge is if you have to say all the words, you can only read as fast as you could talk, but your thinking speed is a lot faster. That's why you can listen to podcasts and audiobooks. How many of you listen to it faster on the faster speeds? A lot of people do because they want to get through it faster. And that's the goal with the reading. You can understand it, but you can't talk that fast. And it's a myth. It's a lie that you have to pronounce words in order to understand them. You don't, right? When you see a word stop, or I happen to be in New York City right now, New York City. You don't have to say New York City to understand what New York City is, right? Because you can see it by sight. And that's the goal, is to reduce subvocalization. And we're going to get to that. Right now, we're just focusing on step 1, right? If we're taking a martial arts, or we're taking a dance, or we're taking any kind, you wouldn't take people to the black belt class. You would go in steps, and you won't even want to be in that class, right? Because you're going to feel very unprepared. Do the work a little bit each day, and it adds up. So I would say, when we're talking about this, the goal is read it, say it to yourself. That's fine. Like, don't try not to say it. Because if you're in your mind, you're thinking, okay, this is a little pet peeve. As you're reading, some of you have that inner voice where you're saying to yourself, oh, am I doing this right? Oh, is this really going to work for me? And let me just be with you as your coach and your friend. If you're saying and have a conversation in your head, forget about the doubt that it creates. Can I do this? Am I good enough? Am I doing it the right way? Forget about all the doubt that it creates. That's a totally different state, because all learning is state dependent. We talked about that a lot in Super Brain. What I would say is, if you're talking to yourself and you're reading, are you going to understand anything? You're not. Okay, so what I would say is, say the words right now. Say the words as you're reading, because I'd rather you say the words than talk yourself out of whether or not you're doing this right. Because and this is, the onus is on you. Like, I could show you the way, but you have to walk the path, right? You have to do the work. But none of this works if you're in your own mind saying, oh, is this really working? Why is everyone doing better than me? You know, did I just waste all my money on this program? If you do that, you're not going to understand anything you read, no matter what speed you're reading it at. So what I'm saying is say the words so you're not saying the negative self-talk. You know, I always talk about in Superbrain, killing ants, automatic negative thoughts. Say the words to yourself. But at a certain point, at about 450 words a minute, you're not going to be able to say all the words because people can't talk that fast. All right. So automatically, you're going to start deleting some of the words in your mind that you have to say. The and, there, the because, ofs. Just like you don't say punctuation. I don't read and be like, you know, I don't say question mark, comma, period, exclamation mark. Nobody does that. You don't have to say the words anymore like that either.
Beautiful. I love when our authors go into one of these powerful rants. It always brings color to our shows. That's fantastic. We have one more common situation that was brought up. It's about day 5 with the indentation and the peripheral vision. So about the peripheral vision, I always have the impression that I skip the words at the right and at the left when I'm using this technique. And also, sometimes we have issues with rereading the same line while using the indentation technique. So what tips do you have for us?
Everything is hard before it becomes easy. All right, everything is difficult before it becomes easy. And every pro was once an amateur, and every expert was once a novice, right? And so here's the thing. The indentation technique, which I believe you were just starting to cover, is basically saying that if you want to read faster, you have this gift of peripheral vision, that if you look at a point, you could usually see what's to the left and to the right of that point. Now, peripheral vision is something you could train. If you want to go online, there's exercises you could do, videos you could do to be able to increase your peripheral vision. Now, why is it important to be able to do that? Like when you soften, you go from foveal vision, which is focused vision, to peripheral vision. It allows you to take more in. And so it's interesting. There's this somatic awareness training that I was doing the other day, and the instructor had me do flexibility drills to see what my range of motion was, like how close can I get to touching the floor, you know, and so like that as an example. And then what they would do is take like an object like this and then move it here, and I would focus on it until I can't see it anymore. And you could train this, and you can know this, that if you took something or had somebody put an object here, when you're able to see it in your peripheral vision, right? And the reason why you want to be able to relax while you read is so you could take more of the words in. Because what slows you down, let me get really clear on this, because I know that we're at the top of the hour. Slow readers, let's think about the slowest readers. Are children before they start to learn how to read. They're the slowest readers because they're pronouncing the words. Then a child is looking at something in front of them, they're not looking at the words, they're looking at the letters, right? They're sounding out the letters and then the syllables. And so in order for them to read, to get through the line of the page, it takes them a lot of time because they have to stop like 2 or 3 times in one word. And they have to repeat that for 10 words. So they might make 20 stops going across the page or more. Now, equate that to most readers, most normal quote unquote readers. They don't look at the letter, they just look at the individual words. Where children look at individual letters, most normal readers look at individual words, so they make 10 stops across the page. Now, the truth is, when you are faster, when you are a super reader, you're a quick reader, you could absorb. What's happening is, you could see the words to the left and to the right, right? And so if you can see 3 words, then you're only making like 3 stops across the page. And it's similar to driving in traffic. Like if you have to stop every 10 stops, stop, as opposed to a person stopping like 3 times or 2 times, that person's gonna be a lot more efficient. And they're gonna get more understanding because they're not breaking up the rhythm and flow. And so the indentation works, but you don't have to indent. You could actually, so the indentation idea here is, as you're reading across the page, you could increase your time and your efficiency by not going all the way to the margin, because your left side and your right side will pick up a word on each side. Now, you don't have, now this is a trainable skill, and in like all trainable skills, it's going to feel a little bit different and weird, just like brushing your teeth with the opposite hand like is. But by doing it consistently, you'll build the fitness. And here, just if it's too much, if like X amount of centimeters is too much or an inch is too much, then just cut it in half. Like start slow, and you're just going back and forth and just getting and relaxing. That's why I think it's important for people to learn how to juggle, because it's not just that it builds more white matter in your brain, which has been shown in Oxford University, bigger brains by learning how to juggle. But in order to juggle, what happens is when you're juggling, if you have 2 eyeballs and 3 balls, you can't look at every single one of them. So you have to soften your gaze, and then you could see all of it here. And that's what you want to train yourself to do. So if you're struggling with the indentation, don't indent as much, cut it in half. And if you're struggling with juggling, and I can't tell you, every single day I get tagged to a dozen different things on social media, where people tag me saying the juggling, like the way it actually works, because it was so frustrating. They want to throw the balls out of the window. They can't stand it. There's something wrong with them. There's nothing wrong with you. It's just you guys got to persevere. You know what it is? It's like this stone cutter, like the parable of the stone cutter. Let's imagine a big stone right here where you are right now, and you're a stone cutter. You're going to make a work of art, right? There's a statue that's inside of this stone, but you got to split it. And so you have the spike, you have the hammer, you hit it. Didn't happen. You hit it again. Nothing happened. You're like, what's going on? Hit it 5 times. Why didn't it split? 50 times, 100 times, 200 times, nothing. Maybe on the 201st time, boom, and it just splits open. Now, my question for you was it that 200th time or 201st time that did it? It was part of it, but it was all the ones that led up to it that was creating a change inside of that stone that maybe you can't see from the outside. What I'm here to say is everything you've ever learned, you were not good at one point. And I'm reminding you this. And that's why I'm always taking flying lessons, or I'm doing all these, like, I want to tell you, like, some of the stuff that I every month I put myself in a situation where I don't know how to do something, because I want to remind myself what it feels like not to be able to know how to, speed read, what it feels like. And I would encourage all of you. That's why I think it's important every 30 days, like, hey, have your to-do list, but have your to-learn list. Like, what are 12 things you're going to learn in 2020? And get a jump start on it right now. And whether it's salsa or ballroom dancing, you want to be able to learn stand-up comedy, whatever it is. Like, I think it's important for you to do this every 30 days, because the problem is most of us don't. There comes a point where in our life where things solidify and we're not open to newness. And so no matter what your age is, neurogenesis, neuroplasticity, you need novelty. Your brain thrives on novelty. You got to challenge yourself. You don't want to be doing the same things over and over again, because nothing's going to change. And most people have been reading. Think about how long you've been reading, how old you are. And since you've been reading since you're 5, 6 years old, right? Or even before that, but you've read the same exact way. So like, you can't just take one session, all of a sudden unlearn like 2 decades, 3 decades, 50 decades of, an ingrained habit. So be patient with yourself, right? You've spent every day reading a certain way. And what I'm saying is in 21 days, you could unravel this. And you could always go back to your old way of reading. That's a good thing about this. I could always go back to typing like this. I don't ever do, because I'm a very fast typer, but I was very emotionally attached to doing this, because I did it for years and I was like, this is what I was used to. But when I got out of my own way, and I went slow and it felt uncomfortable, it felt weird. I felt like, even I had the negative self-talk, I'm not doing it right. I take, steps back to take leaps forward. And that's what I promise you for this too. It's never going to be perfect. I don't have a photographic memory. I don't remember every single line that I read, but I do it so much better than I used to, like 10 times better than I used to. And there's a joy. I don't know if you can feel it, but there's a joy to it. Like, have you ever wanted something for somebody in your life so badly, but you can't do it for them? Just like, think about it. Like some people in your life must be saying, why are you doing those online programs? Why are you always reading all the time? Why are you listening to podcasts and going to Mind Valley Live and A-Fest? What are you, like, people don't know, right? And sometimes it's the people closest to us that keep us in this box because their expectations and their opinions and everything, or their critique. And I always tell people, don't take criticism from someone you wouldn't take advice from. Like own your stuff. I spent a lot of time in senior centers and nursing homes because I lost my grandmother when I was a child. When I was labeled a boy with a broken brain, at 9 years old in class, because the teacher was frustrated with me. I couldn't read, I couldn't do anything. At that time, my grandmother passed away, and she was my caregiver because my dad and my mom had so many jobs. They immigrated to this country. We lived in the back of a laundromat that my mom, worked at, that whole thing. But like my grandmother was everything to me. She passed away of Alzheimer's. So I spent a lot of time in senior centers, not only helping them polish off their memories, but I learned so much because, in my family, we were taught to respect, people who are older, and there's so much wisdom there. But also on top of it, I hear regrets. And the biggest regret, and I've been doing this for 30 years, spending time in senior centers, because I lost all my grandparents. My dad lost his two parents when he was 13, and he moved to this country because they couldn't afford to feed him, we're in Asia. And so like I spent so much time in senior center, but the thing I take away from it is, they have these regrets. And the number one regret is always they shrunk themselves into a box because of what they didn't date the person that they felt drawn to because of what people would think. Or they started a career because that's what their parents wanted them to and everything. And your family and your friends who are saying like, don't stop going to events, stop doing this stuff or whatever, they could be sincere. They could, and I'm saying this because this is very important for your reading, your personal growth. They could be sincere, but they could be sincerely wrong. They could really want you to succeed. Like they maybe have good intention. They don't want you to get hurt. They don't want you to get your hopes up, and stuff like that. Or what I bet a lot of it is, they don't want to lose you, because when you make progress, not only do they feel insecure about themselves because maybe they're not making progress, they feel like you're going to progress maybe out of their life because you're on that certain place. And I'm saying you don't have to like get rid of all your friends and your family or this individual. I'm just saying the reason why I say positive peer group is you can love those people around you, but they don't have to be your peers, right? Because who you spend time with is who you become, especially if you give that emotional, like energy to, the power to. And I'm here to say that I like this community, I've known Vision for over a decade, well over a decade. We've gone to rainforests together on different continents, and when he announced Quest, I clearly want to be part of it because this community is very special, right? Because you're not alone. And so my message for everybody here is I know what's in this program, but more importantly, I know what's inside of you. And, when you feel frustrated or you feel upset or you feel like it's time to give up, it's always a little bit more. Don't get upset at you. Just do a little bit more, and just trust the process. And it's so funny when we surrender it is usually when it comes to us. When we stop trying to find that perfect mate, or we try to stuff, you know what I mean? It's just like, it just starts happening, when we're not so you can have intention for something, but you don't have to have that attachment for it. And I'm saying that you can't steal second with your foot still on first. And I'm asking you to read doing it this way, and you're trying to steal the next thing, but you can't get that comprehension if your foot's still here, right? So just like surrender. If you're doing this, I promise you, you have greatness inside you, and believe in yourself. And the metaphor I always use about the bird in the tree. I'm afraid of heights because I've had a lot of traumatic brain injuries. One of them was falling right off a rooftop. And I don't love heights, but that's why you see me skydiving and like 0G and all this stuff. And I look at a bird up in the tree and you say like, why isn't that bird, if I was to switch positions, I'd be nervous. I'd be so scared. I went, but the bird is confident up in that tree, not because it puts its trust in that tree branch. It's because it puts its trust in its own wings. And you just do not know what you're capable of. And nobody could tell me different. You cannot tell me different after doing this for almost 3 decades, working with every kind of age, ethnicity, background, gender, country, career, everything. Everybody has this potential. So you just have to believe. Here's what I want you to do. Visualize what you want. Let's get really basic. Imagine what you want. See it, hear it, feel it, believe it, and then work daily for it. I mean, it doesn't get any more complicated than this, right? Success is an inside out process, and don't expect to be perfect. The people who are so obsessed with getting everything perfect, those are the people it's going to be the hardest for them to progress. And that's been my experience. And I'm sure you have examples in your life about that. You are capable of doing that. Don't measure it in days. Measure it at the end of this program. People grossly overestimate what they could do in a day, but they overestimate what they could do in a day. Think about like what you intend to do every single day. You're like, oh, I have this 200 things, and you have the great intention, but they underestimate what they could do in a month, and especially underestimate what they could do in a year. All right. So feed your brain until it feeds you back. Believe in yourself, and you guys could do it.
Well, what is there to say? That was absolutely beautiful. Thank you very much, Jim. And those are amazing, great reminders. So guys, you're at the beginning of your process. Trust the process. This is a speed reading training. It's not meant to feel like a smooth sail in the park. It's meant to feel bumpy at times, but the reward is waiting for you at the end of the quest. So if you enjoyed this session, make sure to do your exercises for every single day and join us for our next call. So thank you very much, Jim.
Alex, thank you. Thank you, everybody.
That's all for me. All there is left to say is please stay committed, guys. Continue to work on the piece that's in front of you, and little by little, by the end of this quest, you will become super readers. So thank you very much for all of your questions, for your comments, for your engagement and participation, for showing up and for playing full out. And until our next session, be extraordinary, my friends. Take care. Bye-bye.